Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Access Me Salon, where I will be exploring thousands of access consciousness classes recorded over the last 30 years, the first recording from 1986 until 2022. Join me and find out who likes what class best. I will be interviewing guests from all over the world, people who came to Access very early and who recently joined. So come and explore the world of Access Me. Here we are live. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Access Me Salon. Today with a very special guest, Max Zoulek. Welcome.
Thank you.
And Max, what is the class that we will extrapolate today in our salon that obviously changed your reality? Because I always ask my guests to choose a class that they are personally really excited about or got a lot of change out of it. So what is your choice of class today?
It is the Benevolent Capitalism class from 2015 in Melbourne with Gary Douglas, Steve and Chutisa Bowman. And it's interesting actually, because this class, and this is the first class that I met you, David, as well.
Oh, wow. Really? I remember I heard about this class in Copenhagen. I saw someone walking around with a flyer, and the same night I booked my flight. I said, I need to go there. So what a beautiful pick of the day. So what is it that so fascinated you about this class?
Well, the funny thing is, like 2015, I've changed a lot since then. I mean, it's been 9 years. I started Access in about 2011. So I was a few years into Access. I was intrigued by the class, but I wouldn't say it necessarily changed my reality at the time because I couldn't really receive it. But over time, I've referenced that class, been aware of that class. I've listened to that class again, and I've been able to receive a lot more from it. Because I'm not really a business type, not really a corporate type, but they do talk about it in a way how Steve Bowman specifically says, we are the CEO of our own lives, so it's not just about big business, all that sort of stuff, although they do talk about that. But it's this thing of creating our lives, and their perspectives are so unique.
So the class is called Benevolent Capitalism. For people who are brand new to this, who just downloaded the app or are considering downloading the app, what is benevolent capitalism? Can you give us a short summary of what benevolent capital is and what you learned in this class?
Your audio is breaking up a little bit, so I did get the first part of the question. What is benevolent capitalism?
Yes.
But I missed the second part.
Well, let's start with that. Benevolent capital. For someone who has no idea, who is brand new to this, how would you describe it?
Well, I mean, I would describe it basically how Steve, Chutisa, and Gary described it in the class, which is benevolent is for the greater good of all. It's pretty straightforward, I think. And capitalism is came from capita, per capita, how many cows you had, basically, like per head. So basically organically growing your organic growth of the amount of cows that you have. And I don't mean organic in terms of farming, but just like the growth of something. And
so, capitalism versus socialism, that's a big topic, especially in Europe. And you, originally being German, growing up, or probably not growing up in a socialist background, a lot of people have a point of view about capitalism, that it is ruthless. What is that second word, benevolent? Can you give us a little download on how normal capitalism and benevolent capitalism are different? What's the difference?
Yeah, normal capitalism is basically how much can I get? Like it's take, and it's about taking from others essentially. Whereas benevolent capitalism is you're including everyone and everything, including the earth. So you, as you would know, in regular accounting, the earth is not included, right? But if you create business and you create your financial reality, and because the business is not just financial reality, it includes so much. It includes people, it includes the earth, it includes like lifestyle, you know. So if we include all of this and the people, so it does benefit all. It doesn't mean everyone's going to like it and everyone's going to agree necessarily, but the target being for the benefit of all. So even if something has to be destroyed for something newer and greater to be created, that is greater for everybody. You know, not everyone's going to be happy about that necessarily, but it's part of the process. And, you know, that's change. When we change, the transformation of energy, things need to change and be destroyed to create something new. So that's a huge part, and that's a huge conversation that is being had at the moment in Access about this destruction and creation, and how there is no difference except judgment.
So that what is now in 2024 a very popular topic, that was mentioned 2015 already.
I don't remember them mentioning the destruction part, but this thing of it's like this progression of things, you know, like awareness that was there at the time and that they did speak around, but now it's like progressing into more detailed you know, discussion about creation and what we're avoiding and all that sort of stuff. So for me, it's like it's a part of this whole puzzle. Like when you put all these classes together that you have in the Access Me app, they all have this different flavor and energy and different point of view and different approach, but it's all part of the same puzzle, which is, you know, creation and living. So it's this very unique piece. And Steve and Chutissa, because they've worked in the corporate world for most of their lives, they speak to benevolent capitalism in this really unique way. And I know, David, you know them quite well, have had a lot of conversations with them. They have a very unique point of view about that. And I love the way that Steve talks about things, because he takes things that are like Access, like being in question and asking questions for a benevolent capitalist outcome, and brings that to the boardroom with corporations. And he talks to CEOs and like the heads of big companies to get them to have a different and a greater point of view, and go over hurdles too. When they're coming up against something, for example, they were talking about Uber. This was 2015, right? This is when Uber was first coming out. And you mentioned, David, on there too, that it was banned in Europe because it just didn't fit into the current system. So there's this whole thing of like, okay, how can that be benevolent? Because not everyone's going to like it necessarily. And he was working with taxi companies at the time in Australia to get them to be in the question, and like, how can we actually use this to our advantage? This whole new difference thing that seems like destruction, but could be this really different possibility.
And I remember now that you say it was when Uber came out and the taxi industry was on strike, and they wanted to ban Uber from everywhere because it destroyed their business. They wanted to keep what was in place over years. And now that you mentioned, brilliant conversation, how you can actually invite the taxi industry, invite everyone to look at something different and not go into either or destroying, but adding something to it so it all can change and everyone can benefit. So that is a brilliant conversation. So if anyone of you is interested in that, highly recommend to listen to that class.
It is so relevant now more than ever, is my sense too, because with technology and all the stuff that's occurring and the changes so fast, like so many industries and life, the way life is being lived is changing so rapidly that we've got to be able to adapt. And these are the tools for it, you know, for our own lives, for our own thriving, for the creation of like greater for everybody, including the earth. Because there's a lot of people that aren't including the earth. They're just like, oh, technology is going to fix everything. But it's no answer. It's just an addition.
Wonderful. Thank you for mentioning that class. Also an invitation for the corporate world, for everyone who is interested in how can we use all these brilliant tools and thousands of hours of class material to actually increase our business. Access tools work in the corporate world. It's not just energy language. There is beautiful language that you can use that is understood in the corporate world. And a great source for what language to use as Stephen Bowman and the benevolent capitalism classes. Now
you're really
to you.
you're really great at language within, you know, this reality, but
Well,
infused with question and the tools of access.
consciousness includes everything and judges nothing, even this reality and the form and structure this reality likes so much. So Max, you mentioned before you found Access Consciousness in 2011. So that very first class, Max, that you ever went to with Gary and Dane, and the very first question you asked, do you remember that class and that question?
Nope. I remember the class. I remember
Which
visually the class. I do not remember the content, because like I said, those first classes that I did, I don't remember anything, because I was sort of like a deer in the headlights, and my reality was completely different, predominantly because like I was just like, I had so many issues like in every area of my life. When I heard about the heavy and light tool, I was like, what the fuck is light? Everything was heavy in my life. So I didn't even have a reference for lightness, and just piece by piece, like a little inkling by inkling, after a while, after I started asking like, what is this? I started getting pieces of it. So it was like my reality was completely different back then. And it was just sort of like stumbling through the forest, kind of like blind in a sense. But I knew I wanted this direction. Like I knew, oh, this is stuff that I've never heard about. This is no one else in the other 10 years of metaphysical, etc., all these different things that I've looked at ever spoke about choice, ever mentioned that judgment was a thing, ever like was asking a real question. Like, so it was so unique, and I knew I was, you know, this is what I desired. So I just kept going, and piece by piece.
You got it. So
Well,
listening
I keep getting the pieces, and I'm getting it. I'm more getting it all the time, because you can never really get it, but it's this continuing of like greater, and like benevolent capitalism, essentially. It's like I'm getting more inclusive of all of the energies, all of the things that I've avoided in the past and been like, no, I don't want that, and that's bad, and that's, you know, like how we evade these different things that are like a threat to our you know, personalities or whatever. But there's like more inclusion and more possibilities. It's like it's being the CEO of my life, like Steve Bowman was saying.
Wonderful. So listening to these classes 5, 6, 7, 8 years later, what do you get out of it? What's the value of re-listening to something? A lot of people think, well, I was there, why would I re-listen? There's nothing new. So what's the benefit for you when you listen to classes?
One of the big ones is Gary is really different. Like he goes through like these kind of like phases where the last, I think, 5, 6 or so years, he's been like less weird. Like as Access has kind of entered the mainstream, quote unquote, and like it really grew a lot. He was bringing up like less strange topics that were more like for everybody, right? And so people could get and receive and have what Access is. But before that, he was talking about a lot more weird stuff. You know, he would really go down to this weird rabbit holes and talk about things. And that is such a gift. Like if people are into getting a bit weirder and getting more into like access to the stuff that's even more outside of the norm, then like you hear Gary talk about these things that you don't tend to hear so much these days.
So you mean the deep dive into the beyond? He was talking more about that at the beginning?
Well, I wouldn't say it's the beginning, because, you know, I started 14 years ago. So they'd already been going for quite some time. So I guess it's the middle.
Okay. So we need to listen to the beginning. I'm really curious to listen to classes from 1986, 1987. So I'm I'm on a mission to listen to all these classes. It's just so much that I need just more space to listen to more classes.
Especially with all the stuff that's happening now. Like I'm full on just listening to what's going on now. Like realms of creation stuff is so big. So I'm like really in that. But then there is like the cool thing about the Access Me app is you really can follow the energy of what is relevant in this 10 seconds. You might just listen to a clip of a class, like 5, 10 minutes, but it's exactly what you needed at the time. But there is such an array of all of this information that's available.
So you are an access consciousness facilitator as well.
Yes.
So do you use the app or previous classes as a facilitator, as a resource of help? If you have questions, you go, oh, that is weird.
I haven't yet, but it is pretty new. I've used the reference materials a lot. It's easier to like search via text because it's, thousands of pages of PDF, digital PDF. But it's more so for like the Access Me app, I find, and the example I gave of just listening to like 5-10 minutes of a class at any point of that, 20 years, it's this deepening of like my connection with the tools and what's possible. So it's not as direct as your question with facilitation, but it makes me a better facilitator for sure.
So you mentioned the reference materials. There are a lot of certified facilitators around the world. What would you say, reference material and Access Me? Is it the same? Is it different? What are the reference materials? Thank you for mentioning that, because that's another incredible source of information.
Yeah, they're very different. So the reference materials, the manuals in Access Consciousness for all the core classes, like bars, foundation, level 2, was level 2 and 3, then was COP, now is CFP, choice 4 possibilities. They all have a manual. And Gary and Dane always say it's like whatever the information that's in there has to be relevant to at least like 80% of the people that are taking those classes. So anything that's not as relevant, like all of the information is relevant, but to a different number of people. So if it's less than 80% of people that it's relevant to, then it goes into the reference materials, which means the information is still there, but it's not in this current manual that everyone's taking at the moment, which has to be relevant to the most amount of people. So there is, over all of these 20 plus years, like all that information that's gone through those manuals, some really incredible information is now in the reference materials. So once you've completed foundation class, for example, you can purchase on the Access site the foundation reference materials. So all of the foundation classes that have ever occurred and the information has gone through them into the reference materials would be there. And same with level 2 and 3, COP, CFP, that's like a chunk of reference materials where all of that information is, and it's thousands of pages for like $250, $300 or something. It's like crazy affordable.
Thank you for saying that. It is still relevant, but it's just not relevant to a majority of the people, which doesn't mean that it can be relevant to you. So how do you use the reference materials as a facilitator? You mentioned the search function. How does that work?
Well, because you get the digital download, so you get a number of different documents with the different reference materials. So you just like open it, I've got a Mac computer, so I open it in preview, and then you go to search up the top, and then if you like, what's a topic, relationship, or what's a specific thing. In the foundation reference material, there's something that I looked at recently about what's it called now? Anyway, you type it in there, and then it will search the whole document for you and like highlight every term. And then in the side panel, you can basically see all the page numbers, and then you can go through it and look at all those different elements and see.
So like an intranet of consciousness.
Yeah.
Yeah, wonderful.
Yeah, it's a good way of putting it. And hopefully in the future, at some point, Access Me, you'll be able to search that. Like if it's like all sort of like transcribed, and however the technology develops, maybe that will be searchable in a similar way.
You just mentioned searchable. When you look at the Access Me app now and someone is completely new and wants to discover, what would you suggest? What would your advice be on where to start and how to start? Is there, start here, then do this, then do that? What would be your personal advice here for someone who's completely new and go, oh my God, I want this. Where do I start?
Cool. So it depends on how new they are to Access. If they're very new to Access, I would recommend just looking for some introduction classes, because it'll give you like a really good foundational sense of like how Access works, like just with the clearing statements and the processes and so forth, and then develop into some more advanced classes like any of them. Following the energy, basically meaning, oh, this looks really fun, click on that. you know.
You mean no form, no structure, just following the energy and
Yeah.
scroll through and stop wherever there is a fun graphic?
Exactly.
Wonderful.
Or like a topic that really is like, oh yeah, that sounds super fun or interesting, you know, go for it. And yeah, you're going to come across a lot of stuff on the Access Me app because it comes from so long ago. Like the recording quality is really different. The people that were there are really different. So it's such a big mix. You've really got to follow the energy, I would say.
Wonderful. Well, last
Yeah.
question for you, Max. Benevolent capitalism, your favorite class. If there was something like a second favorite, what's the second favorite class that you chose on the Access app? If there is something like that.
Gosh. I don't know if I can answer that question.
Well, you don't have to. I can see in your eyes there is just, wow, a universe of possibilities.
Well, that's the thing. It's like, yeah, there is so many. The benevolent capitalism class I picked out because I met you there, and I remember that class, and it was like quite some time ago. So that it was, and really recently listening to it again was really cool. Yeah, I can't put them into 1, 2, 3, 4, some sort of order. Sorry.
So you like it all. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Max, for your introduction to benevolent capitalism. Enjoy exploring the app, and thank you.
Thank you for having me on, David.